The summer heat in Napa Valley felt eternal. It wrapped around the hills like silk, saturating the vineyards with golden light and whispered promises. The vines bent heavy with ripening grapes, and the air smelled of sugar, earth, and sunburned. Skin Claire Whitmore worked among them, her hands stained violet, her blonde hair perpetually twisted into a loose knot that no breeze could tame. She was 23 and floating in a purgatory of healing, between the ruins of her past and the uncertain shape of her future. She hadn't planned on staying long. The vineyard job was supposed to be temporary, a break from Seattle, from the stiff, gray life she'd been trying to escape. She wasn't meant to matter here, just another seasonal worker, blending into the scenery of rustic charm and high-end tourism. Then he arrived. He said his name was Julian. No last name, just Julian. He wasn't like the others who visited the vineyard. He didn't talk about wine like it was an investment portfolio. He didn't flash money or name-drop New York restaurants. He wore linen shirts and old boots, carried a film camera slung over one shoulder, and looked at the world like it had secrets he intended to uncover. When he looked at Claire, it was like he saw all of her, the parts she hid. The stories she didn't tell. Their first encounter was nothing, a shared glance across a crowded tasting event. But over days that glance became a nod, then a smile, then long meandering conversations as the sun set behind the hills. He asked questions that made her think. She asked questions he artfully dodged. There was a pull between them, slow and magnetic. They began meeting in quiet corners, behind the fermenting tanks, under the cypress trees, in the kitchen late at night, sharing stolen glasses of Sangiove's. He took her photo when she wasn't looking. She memorized the curve of his mouth when he laughed. They never called it love, but it lived in the spaces between their words. In the way he brushed the hair from her face, in how her breath caught every time he leaned in. Their bodies tangled beneath star-scattered skies and in the cool shade of the cellar, where the scent of oak and promise lingered in the air. She never asked what he did for a living. She liked the mystery. It made him feel real in a world that so often wasn't. And then, one morning, he was gone. The guest house he rented stood empty. No suitcase, no camera. Just a note left under her pillow. Don't look for me. It'll hurt less. Claire stood in the doorway, heart pounding like thunder in her chest, reading the note again and again until the words blurred. He hadn't just left, he had vanished. She tried to bury it, went back to pouring wine, pretending nothing had changed. But every corner of the vineyard held echoes of his laughter, his touch, his shadow. 2 weeks later, his face was on the cover of a business magazine at the grocery store checkout. Julian Roth, billionaire heir to Roth Consolidated, newly appointed CEO of his family's multinational empire. The headline called him America's most elusive tech royalty. Claire felt the floor drop beneath her. He hadn't just left her. He had hidden who he was, and she had loved a ghost in borrowed jeans and a half smile. Not a billionaire. That summer didn't just fade. It branded her, and no matter how far she ran, she carried the burn with her. Claire left Napa as soon as the leaves started to turn. The vineyard, once soaked in golden warmth, began to chill with the sharp promise of autumn. The tourists thinned, grapes disappeared into barrels, and Julian Roth became a memory stitched into the soil she walked on. Seattle welcomed her back with gray skies and muted tones. She found a job as a paralegal at a mid-tier law firm downtown, safe, structured, forgettable. The office buzzed with routine and urgency, none of it ever about her. She learned how to blend in again, bought blackout curtains to silence the mornings, got used to coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard. She dated a little, a barista with soft eyes, a marketing executive with a neat beard and a schedule for everything. They said the right things, took her out, made her laugh in moments. But it was like sipping water after wine, necessary, lifeless. None of them looked at her the way Julian had. None of them left her breathless just by entering a room. Julian lived everywhere, no on magazine covers, in Forbes articles, on tech, Panels streamed to her office break room. Roth consolidated, expanded into AI, private aerospace, green tech. He dated supermodels and European royalty. Claire watched from a distance, as if observing a comet whose tail she once touched. Once, she saw a photo of him at the Met Gala. His arm was around an actress whose dress cost more than Claire's annual rent. He was smiling, but it wasn't the smile she knew. It didn't reach his eyes. Still, life moved forward. Her sister married, her father passed away. Claire changed apartments twice. She adopted a cat she named August after the month she met Julian. Started wearing her hair down again. And then 3 years later, the letter arrived. A white envelope. No return address, heavy, embossed, dot inside. A wedding invitation. Julian Roth and Genevieve LaRue request the honor of your presence. She read it, standing barefoot in her kitchen. Her cereal going soggy on the counter. At first she thought it was a mistake. Maybe another Claire Whitmore. Maybe a PR stunt. But the handwriting on the address, deliberate, slanted, was his. She knew it. She remembered the way he scribbled in the margins of books they read together, or wrote tiny notes on napkins and left them under her coffee mug. Claire sat down, hard. Her lungs refused to span. Julian was getting married, and he had invited her for what? Closure? Cruelty? She placed the invitation in a drawer and closed it. For a week, she didn't speak about it. She went to work. She fed the cat. She even smiled at a coworker's baby photos. But at night, she couldn't sleep. Why? Would he ask her to come? She pulled the card out again on the 8th day. Genevieve LaRue. The name was familiar. A French fashion heiress. Brilliant. Impossibly beautiful. The press had been speculating about their engagement for months. Claire had ignored the rumors. Now, it was real. She looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Paler, thinner, older than she felt. But her eyes, those ocean eyes still, held pieces of the girl who had danced barefoot with a billionaire pretending not to be one. Against all logic. Claire booked a flight to Aspen. She found a dress she couldn't afford and took time off. Work. Her boss raised an eyebrow. She didn't explain. She told herself it wasn't about rekindling anything. She just needed to look him in the eyes and know. Had she ever mattered? Because sometimes the heart needs an answer, even if it breaks. In the process, Aspen shimmered like a secret. High above the rest of the world, the mountains stood cloaked in summer snowmelt and privilege. The kind of place where billionaires wrote their futures in glass and granite. Claire's car climbed slowly toward the estate, tires crunching on gravel imported from somewhere foreign. Sky was too blue, like someone had turned up the saturation. Everything felt unreal. She sat stiffly in the back seat, her dress smoothing out over her lap. Her fingers clutched around a clutch that held nothing but a lipstick and a letter she hadn't written. Her blonde hair was pinned in a loose chignon, strands curling from the Colorado humidity. Her heels clicked with authority she didn't feel when she stepped out. Onto the stone drive. The Roth estate loomed like a cathedral, modern, sprawling, all wood and glass that reflected the mountain range like a mirror. It looked like it had been built to touch God. A valet took her name and her courage. She walked through the arched entryway and into another world. Everyone looked like money. Old money. The kind that wore navy and taupe and never checked price tags. French perfume floated through the air. Ice clinked in champagne flutes. People didn't smile. Here they assessed. Claire moved quietly, invisible, her presence like a ripple in a still pond. She thought she could vanish in the back behind pillars or tall centerpieces. But the staff led her straight down the aisle to a chair near the front. Surrounded by names she recognized from magazine features and scandalous columns. Her name, Claire Whitmore, rested on a place card in gold. Foiled dots she wanted to leave. But her body had committed to this dot. And then the music started. A string quartet, soft and haunting, played something modern dressed in tradition. The guests rose. Claire rose with them, her breath caught in her throat. Julian appeared. He stood at the edge of the altar like he belonged, there confident, elegant, wrapped in a tuxedo so perfectly tailored it looked painted on. He was broader than she remembered. His jaw was sharper, more defined. But his eyes, they searched the crowd for a fraction of a second. And they found her. Only her. Claire's heart stopped. His expression didn't change, but something moved beneath the surface. A twitch, a recognition, a question. Then she saw Genevieve, the bride, the perfect woman. She moved like ice, water smooth. Silent, beautiful, in a way that made you question your own reflection. Her dress was custom, sleek and severe, no lace or softness. Her veil fluttered in the breeze like silk on fire. They stood together, framed by pine trees and mountain air. The officiant began. Claire sat down, trembling. Each word that passed was another nail in the coffin of that old summer, that old love, until Julian took out a folded piece of paper. His vows. He didn't look at Genevieve when he unfolded them. He looked at the trees behind her, at the mountains, at Claire. And then he said her name, Claire. A gasp so quiet only she might have noticed it escaped her lips. He continued, not an apology, not a declaration, but a story about the summer that taught him silence was sometimes louder than words, about how some memories never leave you when you build empires to bury them. He didn't say, I loved her, but he didn't need to. He said, she taught me what it meant to feel seen. And Claire, heart thundering, knew. He wasn't just marrying someone else. He was marrying her ghost. The crowd clapped at the end. Genevieve smiled politely. Claire sat frozen, her name spoken like a secret, like a prayer still echoed in the mountains. She wasn't forgotten. She was immortalized in the one place. It never lied. His vows. Claire didn't remember the applause, didn't register the doves released or the petals falling like snow. She sat frozen as the ceremony dissolved into elegance and celebration, her hands clenched in her lap, nails biting her palm. Around her, people stood, embraced, moved on. But she couldn't. Her name was still suspended in the air. She'd heard it from his lips. In front of everyone, no one understood. Not Genevieve, not the guests, not the press who snapped pictures of smiles hiding secrets. Only Claire knew the truth behind those words. He hadn't spoken to the woman beside him. He had spoken to the woman he'd left behind. She slipped away before the couple's first kiss. Down the back steps of the venue, past towering arrangements and designer laughter. Her heels sank into the soft earth, but she didn't care. She reached the edge of the woods bordering the estate and stood there, breathing. The sky turned the color of bruised lavender as dusk moved in. She wanted to scream, to sob, to demand answers she would never get. But nothing came, not even tears, only silence, and then Claire. His voice again. She turned slowly. Julian stood at the edge of the path, still in his tuxedo, body loosened, shirt unbuttoned at the collar. There was no crowd, no Genevieve, just him, looking at her like the world had tilted sideways. I wasn't supposed to see you, she whispered. He didn't answer, just stepped closer. Her instinct told her to run, but her body stayed still. You said my name, she said. Why? He looked down, then back up because I never stopped hearing it. And just like that, everything collapsed. The walls she'd built, the rehearsed anger, the numbness it all broke. You left me without a word. I know. You lied. Didn't. I just didn't tell you everything. She shook her head, laughter bubbling up from the pit of something raw. You're married now. Julian looked toward the venue. No, I'm not. Claire blinked. He stepped closer, voice barely above the wind. She knew about you. She knew I wasn't whole. She just hoped I'd change. I didn't. You? Said vows. I wrote vows, he said, but not to her. Silence. Then why invite me? She asked because I had to see if you'd come. If you still felt it too. Claire's chest tightened. You selfish bastard. I know. He didn't chase her as she turned and walked away. Back at her hotel, Claire threw the dress across the room. She sank to the carpet, wrapped in silence, guilt, longing, fury. She had imagined so many endings to this story. Somewhere he chose her. Somewhere she forgot him. But this was worse. This was unfinished. And 2 days later, it became headlines. Julian Roth's wedding canceled mid-reception. Runaway groom leaves. Heiress at the altar. Claire's phone lit up with messages. She hadn't spoken to in years. Suddenly remembered her name. Her boss offered sympathy she didn't ask for. Her sister called every hour, but she stayed silent until one morning there was a knock. She opened the door, and there he was, not in a tuxedo, not in a tailored suit, in jeans, a hoodie, a camera around his neck. Just Julian again. Claire stared at him, her hand still on the doorknob, pulse hammering like a war drum in her throat. Julian stood there silent, uncertain, stripped of the armor wealth so often gave him. He looked like a man who hadn't slept. Like a man who had nothing left to lose. What are you doing here? She asked, voice like ashdot. He didn't answer immediately, just lifted his eyes to hers, steady and quiet. It's the same eyes that once looked at her like she was sunlight after rain. And for a moment, standing in the soft morning light of a Colorado hotel hallway, Claire forgot how to breathe. I thought I could let you go, he said. I thought pretending was easier. She stepped back. Not an invitation. A reaction. You made your choice, she said. And it wasn't me. Oh? It was silence. I was wrong. Claire crossed her arms. Her heart roared in her chest, begging her not to listen. But she didn't close the door. Why now? She asked. Julian exhaled. Because I wrote my vows to the wrong woman. I gave a future to someone I never saw. In my past, I kept waiting to feel what I felt that summer. And I never did. You mean the summer you lied about who you were and vanished? He winced. Yes, Kay. And now you think a confession makes it right? No, I just needed you to know that you weren't nothing. You were everything. And I've paid for it every single day since I walked away. Claire's voice dropped. Then why walk away? He hesitated because I was afraid that if I told you the truth, you'd love me less. And I couldn't bear to see it leave your eyes. She stared at him, stunned. I didn't need you to be a billionaire, Julian. I just needed you to stay. Silence pressed between them, heavy, fragile. He stepped forward. Come with me. Claire blinked. What? I don't mean run away. Come with me, as yourself, as Claire. I don't want anyone else beside me anymore. She looked at him, really looked. Not the heir. Not the billionaire. Just the man who had ruined her and haunted her and somehow still made her heart feel like it could fly and break at once. I don't know if I trust you. You don't have to. Just walk. Just today. Claire hesitated. And then she stepped. Outside, closing the hotel door behind her, they didn't speak much. He drove a rental car down quiet mountain roads while she stared out the window, watching pines blur into horizon. He took her to a lake hidden between two cliffs, where the water was still and silent and everything smelled like pine needles and memories. They sat on a fallen log. He handed her a thermos of tea. She took it slowly. I thought you were going to marry her, she said. I thought so too. They watched a hawk drift over the trees. Julian broke the silence. When I left the vineyard, I wasn't running from you. I was running from who I had to become, but you were real. And I didn't think I deserved real. Claire turned. To him, I'm not the same girl you met. I know. I'm not the same man, either. They sat for hours, talking, not talking, letting the ache speak in ways words couldn't. When they returned to town, he walked her to her door. She didn't invite him in, but she didn't close it right away. Either. That night, Claire stood by the window, moonlight painting her skin silver. She didn't know if this was a new beginning or just an old ending rewritten. But for the first time in years, she didn't feel haunted. She felt seen. Tomorrow, she would decide what came next. But tonight, she simply remembered how it felt to be remembered. The days that followed moved differently. Slower, softer, like time itself. Wasn't sure what came next. Claire didn't rush to forgive him. She didn't let nostalgia write checks against wounds that hadn't healed. But she didn't push him away either. Julian didn't beg. He didn't spin fairy tales. He simply stayed. Quiet, present, real. They talked in fragments, memories. Traded over coffee, glances exchanged in silence. At night, Claire sat on her hotel balcony, watching the stars, wondering what it meant to be remembered by someone who once forgot how to love you properly. Then one evening, he brought her a letter. No fanfare, no dramatic gestures. Just a folded page, worn at the edges, trembling slightly in his hand. These, he said, were the vows I didn't speak. She hesitated, then took it. He left without waiting for her to read. Inside, it wasn't polished or pretty. It was raw and handwritten. Imperfect, and it said this: Claire, you weren't part of my plan. You didn't come with an agenda or a last name that turned heads. Kay walked into my life and reminded me what it meant to feel everything all at once. I was running from the version of myself that everyone else expected. And somehow, in you, I saw the man I wanted to be. You saw him too. I left because I was scared. Scared of needing someone, scared of choosing real over legacy. But I've spent every day since trying to build a kingdom that meant nothing without you in it. And if this is the last thing I ever get to say to you, let it be this: you weren't a chapter in my life. You were the book. Julian. Claire read it once, then again and again. Each time something cracked open inside her. Not the ache that had always been there, but the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the pain hadn't been for nothing. 2 months later, she stood on a different vineyard, not in Napa, not even in the U. It was a quiet place, tucked in the hills of southern France, overlooking rows of wild grapes and lavender. She wore boots in the dirt and let her hair down again. Julian arrived 3 weeks after she did. He didn't come with a ring, not yet. He came with suitcases, a new passport, camera, and eyes that had learned how to wait. They didn't rush into anything. Love didn't need to be fast. It just needed to be true. They worked side by side, helping locals restore the land. They learned to cook, learned to forgive, learned to laugh again. And then one crisp morning, with fog curling low and the sun just waking the valley, he read those same vows again. This time, not at a wedding for someone else. This time, just for her. No guests, no cameras, no applause, just Julian, just Claire. It's just the kind of love that survives the fire.